I was born profoundly deaf, and I had a deaf role model from the day I was born, in the form of my brother, who was 12 years older than me. I could learn and grow from him. Both my parents were signers as well, so I was introduced to the deaf community from the day I was born. I was born hearing, and at the age 2.5 years old, I lost my hearing due to an illness. My mother was very, very concerned. She was concerned about how we would communicate with each other, and when I was 5 years old, we went to the doctors, and they had a conversation regarding deaf schools in Sydney, and the doctor said Darlington was one of them. It seemed like a jail at first, a boarding school where I stayed 5 days a week. I cried for my mum consistently. I was exposed to sign language from older deaf students at the boarding school for 5 days a week, and then I would head home for the weekend to spend with my family, and then return to school the following week and do it all over again. And here I am now, and it is great. I am formerly from Adelaide, and the sign I dreadfully miss is this one, which is the sign for responsible. I then moved to Sydney, and this was a sign I really did miss. I don't know if Adelaide continue to use that sign for responsible, but it is the sign I miss. I miss older signs from the older generations, like this one, which is the sign for sorry. Also, this one, never. The fist used to go up with this sign, and now it goes down. There's different signs for certain words, and I miss those. Oh yes, more and more so now compared to the past. We didn't used to sign back in the day because we were fearful of being teased or bullied. But now there is a lot more acceptance, and I thank TV for the exposure to Auslan. Having interpreters on the news has increased people's awareness, and things are a lot better now in society because of this exposure. People are a lot nicer than they used to be. When I was 15 or 16, I left school. My family lived in the country, and often my mother and father would be embarrassed and would stop me from signing or hide me away. After a period of time, a couple of years, I didn't care anymore. I made it quite known that I signed, and people were gobsmacked and would stare in awe. I started getting used to them staring at myself and others when we were signing, and now I'm extremely 100% comfortable using my language. Back in the day, we never used to call it Auslan. We used to call it sign language. Auslan was a new word that we used for our language. What I miss is the Deaf Club, where we would all gather and catch up. Seeing everyone use Auslan was wonderful. We don't have deaf clubs anymore, and because of this, I really miss those conversations and bumping into people that I haven't seen in a while. This was how we preserved our language, and I am fearful of losing it, and it is important for our deaf community to keep that going. We really need to cherish and preserve our language. If we had a deaf club again, would it be the same? I'm not sure. When I was around 17 or 18, I was determined to find a deaf club. I drove from the country to Sydney because that's where a deaf club was, and I loved it. I went there for meetings like sport, table tennis, or tennis. There were lots of different events where deaf people would gather, and we would have such great conversations, and then I would head back home to the country. I loved my time commuting to the deaf club, and then around 20 years ago, there was no more deaf club, and now it feels like there's something missing. There's nowhere to go to meet deaf people. Where have all the people disappeared to? Where do I go play table tennis or tennis now? If you don't have a phone or internet, how can we connect with each other like before? It was really hard. For a time there, it got really difficult, but technology got better. It gave us access to visual communications with phones and iPads. It's better, but it's not the same. It's not the same as when I played table tennis or tennis and we would get together with my friends. It's really disappointing for us and the younger generation. If I can also add to what Trevor has just said, what I really miss about the Deaf Club is the role models. The younger generation used to look up to the deaf elders and learn from them, and in the absence of deaf clubs, we don't have this anymore, and I believe we really need this. The stories that I used to hear from the deaf elders and learn from them was amazing,